We got a pretty decent slate of college football games this weekend, and I'm here to help you navigate through the madness, giving you the most profitable player prop entries on the different DFS platforms for all of these college football games. We have Ole Miss versus Georgia, Michigan versus Penn State, probably the best game on the slate, Alabama versus Kentucky, even some awesome games like Texas Tech and Kansas, and West Virginia, Oklahoma. We see all of these slips showing up on the Daily Grind Fantasy Correlation Tool. And that is the tool that I'm using to provide you with these player props. So specifically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 3 total slips for you guys to lock in for this weekend, all 3 of which are going to be on Underdog Fantasy, and they're all 4 pretty decent games. But before we get into the individual slips, I do just want to talk to you about the DFS Correlation Tool and why you should be locking in these slips. So the way it works is choose a game. Let's start with the Ole Miss versus Georgia one. What the DFS Daily Grind Fantasy DFS Correlation Tool does is it provides player props that all have some sort of positive correlation together, meaning all of the individual plays are correlated with each other. If one of them hits, the other ones are more likely to hit as well. For example, quarterback passing yards. Let's say that we're taking a quarterback to go over their passing yardage prop. Well, if the quarterback goes over their prop, that means that the receivers individually, now obviously not every single receiver, but if you look at the individual receivers, they are more likely to go over their receiving yardage prop. If someone is throwing for a bunch of yards, someone's got to catch them. And the correlation tool just combines those types of examples in one individual entry. And it makes sense. You want to take these on the DFS apps. You don't want to take them on the actual sports books. FanDuel, DraftKings. If you take a same game parlay that is correlated, they're going to heavily reduce what the payout is. And I can show you exactly what I mean. So when you take a 2-leg entry on Underdog, you shouldn't do that. It's the not good bang for your buck, but the implied odds are plus 200. Let's look at just a correlated slip. We're taking Bryce Young over his passing yards, and we're taking a Panthers receiver over their receiving yards. Look at this odds at what they give you, plus 160. Now just combine that by 3 more plays, and you kind of see just how big the gap is between the DFS books and what these sports books are offering. So if you're watching these videos, you should not be taking them on the actual sports books. They should only be taken on the DFS platforms, because FanDuel nukes your odds. They give you terrible odds if you take a correlated same game parlay. The DFS books don't do that. They give you the same exact payout regardless. So from just a logical perspective, it makes sense, right? The plays are correlated together and you're getting the same exact payout. That makes sense. But don't let me talk to you about it. I mean, do let me, but also let me have the performance talk to you about it as well. So every single slip since August 18th, and this is obviously not sports specific, it's literally every single slip that shows up on the correlation tool has been tracked since August 18th, basically saying each slip equals 1 unit. Well, since August 18th, the Daily Grind Fantasy Correlation Tool is up 561 units. That's incredible. That's in just under 3 months, up 561 units. Now, we don't unit shame here. Whatever your unit size is, just multiply that by 561. So if you have a $10 unit size, which is, I would say, on average, smaller than most of the people that I talk to, even with that, a $10 unit size, you would be up $5,600 in under 3 months of using the correlation tool for an ROI, basically 34%. You're not going to find a 34% ROI just anywhere. That is insane. Now, if your unit size is more than $10, and let's say you have a $100 unit size, you're up $56K from playing every single slip on the correlation tool. Now, one thing I do want to be clear about, this is just the graph, for informational purposes, doesn't predict future earnings, right? If you got in on one of these downswings, that would have been frustrating. But the historical data shows just how incredibly successful this tool is. So the correlation tool, I cannot recommend it enough. You can choose which game you're looking for. So if you just want to watch Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, or you're a big Michigan or Penn State fan and know you're going to want to watch this game and you want to have something to sweat out, you can filter for a specific game as well. So that's how the correlation tool works. That's why you need to be playing them on the DFS books and not the sports books. Now let's get into some of these slips. So the first one that we have here is in the Ole Miss versus Georgia game. And I mentioned we're taking the quarterbacks over their passing yards. Well, we see that right here. Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, both over their passing yardage prop, 280.5 for Carson Beck, 216.5 for Jackson Dart. Well, if the quarterbacks are throwing for a lot of yards, somebody's got to catch them. In this case, for Ole Miss, we're taking Dayton Wade and Jordan Watkins to go over their receiving yardage prop, 48.5, 46.5. And then we're taking Rara Thomas for Georgia to go over their receiving yardage prop, over 35.5. Now, I want to pause here. There are a couple things to note. Number one, you see this on the right, profit margin and correlation score. So I'll start with the correlation score. The math nerd definition of this is the number 89.51, which is what you see here. It's the correlation coefficient of each leg. The dumbed down version of it, the correlation score, is giving you, from a mathematical perspective, exactly how correlated these plays are together on a scale of 1 to 100. Obviously, 89% correlation is really good. We see even some like above that, 89.92, 90.57. Then to the left here, we see profit margin. And if you're actually using the tool, I will say you can click this little icon here and it'll define basically anything you're looking for. But the profit margin, so this is calculated by adding up the expected value of each individual play. So not only are all of these plays positive correlation between each other, they're also individually positive expected value, right? We're still playing positive EV plays. We're just playing them that are correlated. So the profit margin adds up the expected value of each individual leg, along with taking into account the correlation score. It spits out your expected profit, your profit margin, your percent EV, however definition best makes sense to you. Not sure that sentence was correct, but that's okay. That's what the profit margin is. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is why are we playing 5 picks non-insured? Long story short, it's the best bang for your buck. This is what the icon will tell you. This non-insured option is the best pick for underdog. Now, it's not always going to be the case for underdog. PrizePicks is always going to be 5 and 6 pick flex. Always, always, always. You see a lot of 6 pick flex here, but 5 is also good on PrizePicks. Sometimes for underdog, you might need to play 5 picks with insurance, or 4 picks, or 3 picks without insurance. It'll tell you on the correlation tool exactly how many legs you should have. And that's everything in terms of how the correlation tool works. And this is our underdog, our first entry for Ole Miss versus Georgia. As I promised, we have 2 more to give you. Number 1, Penn State versus Michigan. Huge game, obviously, for both of these teams. So in this case, we're taking the Penn State quarterback, Drew Aller, not to go over his passing yards, but to go over his passing attempts. So we're not confident about the yards. We are confident that he's going to at least attempt 30 or more passes. So we're not taking his yards, but we do like the Penn State receiver, Kendre Lambert-Smith, to go over his receiving yardage prop of 61.5. So Drew Aller might not be passing for a ton of yards. He will be passing a lot. The player that will be catching them predictably, or at least our prediction, Keandre Lambert-Smith. But we're also taking Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy over his passing yardage prop of 236.5. Taking Michigan running back Blake Corum to go over their receiving yards prop of 4.5, and another Michigan receiver to go over their receiving yards prop, Cornelius Johnson, over 38.5 receiving yards. Pretty good correlation score here of 89.92 with an insanely high profit margin of 235.40%. 235% profit margin is crazy. Second slip, and then finally the Alabama versus Kentucky game. So we're going back to the both quarterbacks passing yardage prop. Devin Leary over 204.5 passing yards. Jalen Milroe over 222.5 passing yards. And then from the Kentucky side, we're taking Dane Key over 44.5 receiving yards, we're taking Ray Davis. Over 12.5 receiving yards, and then Jermaine Burton for Alabama, over 56.5 receiving yards. 90th percentile correlation score, profit margin over 200%. All three of these are awesome, and that's not the only slips that you can lock in. If I reset everything, some NFL slips for you guys to lock in as well. I gave you my favorite for college football, but we have a ton of NFL. So if you are riding with me, comment and let me know. Other than that, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and have a good one.